Hello everyone, my name is Loko and welcome to some more StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. Today we're going to be discussing a game that I played recently. First is a guy known by the name of Foster, something like that. And it's going to be a Zerg versus Zerg played on the new Whirlwind Alley, known as Cactus Valley. It's pretty much the same thing as Whirlwind Alley. And in this specific game, I decided to go for the Zerg DEATHBALL. Now I know what you're thinking. You're like, wait, what? Zerg DEATHBALL? Isn't that like a Protoss thing? You know, doesn't that just mean that Protoss sits back for the entirety of the game, makes like a massive army, and then finally starts moving out? Well, honestly, in Legacy of the Void, this same concept is true for Zerg. Zerg got a bunch of buffs across the board, and, you know, most notably would be in the end game, would be the Hydralisks and the Vipers as well. But in this specific game, I decided to go for a DEATHBALL containing Hydralisks, Lurkers, and Vipers. And you may be a little bit confused about that, but hopefully this game will show you how strong it can be and why it can be powerful as well. So in this game, I'm gonna go over the build that I'm doing. I'm gonna try and explain what the heck is going on, how I got to this point, and basically, you know, the general strategy behind this style. So the reason why I'm playing this is because I wanted to try something else. I always play a very aggressive style and a really timing focused and like a really, you know, timing attack and upgrade focused style. But this one really allows you to just sit back and be very, very defensive. And the reason why I'm playing it is because I lost to it quite a bunch versus none other than Stephano. I actually did play a game against it, or against him as well, where I did lose against a similar strategy. I will leave that as the very first link right below the like button in the description below, so you can check that one out if you haven't already. But basically, I'm gonna spoil the game, so if you're interested in that, check it out right now or pause this video. But basically, in that game, Stephano decides to go for the super passive play, and he just completely wrecks me. He completely decimates me, even though I get a very solid advantage. And I asked him after the game, and I asked him, like, hey, like, do you ever lose with this? And he was like, well, no. If I get my third base up and running, I pretty much win every single game. Yeah, I've been trying to practice it. I've been trying to figure out how to do that strategy myself. And it's not easy. It's very difficult. If you're looking for an easy build, it's definitely not this. The simple reason for that is because we are going to play so passive, our opponent will need to come at us. And, you know, the fact that our opponent will be attacking us obviously requires us to figure out at what point, or at what point we need to stop making drones and at what point we need to start making army. And it's been taking me a couple of weeks. I've been practicing this a couple of weeks, but I think we're finally at a point where I have, you know, at least some confidence in playing this style. If you've been watching the live stream, you are aware of the amount of times that I did lose with a similar thing. But we seem to have nailed it down. Now, I'm sure there are still timing attacks that will be able to kill this exact style that I'm doing right now. But eventually, it's sort of like the same for Protoss versus Zerg. And eventually, Zerg will find out a way to basically be safe against every single timing attack. Especially in Zerg versus Zerg, because there really aren't that many. At which point you can go ahead and execute this in pretty much every single game. And I would not be surprised if it turns out that Zerg versus Zerg, you know, will end up being this way. Now, recently, they did nerf the Lurker. The Lurker now does a little bit less damage against armored unit, but honestly, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. In this specific game, my opponent is gonna go for a super standard style. He's gonna go for roaches and Hydralisks, and I believe in the end, once he realizes what is going on, he's gonna go for infestors and Ultralisk. And during the entirety of the game, really, my opponent does have an economy advantage, you know, up on me. So right now I'm scouting around, checking what is going on. And as you may have noticed, I did get a spine crawler early on just for some defense. Also, I'm going up for a very, very quick hive. And you may be wondering, I haven't actually pointed it out yet, why there is such a quick third hatchery in my main base. This is also something I've been trying out a lot. Seems to work very well, especially if you go for Lurkers. Basically, the idea behind it is that you focus only on 2 queens, inject once, and then use the larva that is generated by the hatcheries instead for the larva production. The rest you can just sort of save up the energy on the queens. Now, my opponent is doing a little bit of aggression right here. I did manage to get the wall up off in time. Do get the Hydra already up. Got the double evolution chamber coming in right now as well. And the Roach Warren. So it's a little bit similar as like the timing attack that you usually do in Zerg for the Zerg. Except for the fact that I didn't really rush out my Roach Warren and my Evo chambers. And that I instead decided to focus on a very, very, very quick hive. So the idea behind it is that if my opponent is going for this Roach timing attack that is very common, and you know, so far I'm sort of assuming that he will, because as you can see, you know, he got the third base going and he got everything going that it really needs to get that, you know, for that build. The idea is that you get Hydralisk out in time before that push can come out. And the reason for that, well, Hydras, you know, or not Hydralisks, sorry, Lurkers. You get Lurkers out in time to deal with that timing attack, and the reason for that is because Lurkers do an incredible amount of damage. Even though they got nerfed a little bit, doesn't really matter. They still do a ridiculous amount of damage to anything on the ground. And in Zerg vs Zerg, you know, if your opponent is going for a roach timing attack and you have like 6 Lurkers out, it's basically game over at that point, and they won't be able to do very much of anything anymore. So I am making my Lurker den already. Very, very early on, got my Lurker den coming in. Turns out there's actually a hole in my wall of right there. I didn't even know that. That's the worst wall of ever right here. Still gotta get used to the newer maps, I suppose. But I'm trying to make some army right now, trying to transition towards the third base. But I'm already assuming that my opponent is gonna go for some sort of aggression. Be it Mutalisks, be it Hydralisks, be it Roaches, be it Zerglings, whatever. But I'm gonna assume my opponent is having the bigger economy right now. And if you take a look at income real quick, it's actually pretty even. But I know that my opponent already has the third base up and mining. So, you know, it's a little bit scary right now for me. But I'm not too worried about this. Like I said, if I do manage to get that third base up, I will be able to simply just, you know, start pushing ahead. Now, one thing to note as well is that I've not really been scouting very aggressively at all. I've really only been focusing on my own play, on my own strategy and my own defensive play. And not so much on what my opponent is doing. I honestly don't really care. I don't plan on moving out. I don't plan on being aggressive. And, well, you can see what a misplaced Overlord does right now. I could have easily saved this hatchery if it wasn't for the fact that I had, you know, didn't have an Overlord in the bottom right of the map. I mean, I could have just seen these Zerglings run in. Poor play on my end, but it ends up not being that big of a deal. Honestly, you know, that shouldn't really be happening. But here we go. I'm gonna start morphing in the first Lurkers right now. So the first are already out, but like the first good set of Lurkers. And this will put me up to a total of 4. Now, 4 may not sound very significant, but keep in mind, most people will not actually bring an Overseer in the first place. I mean, come on, why would you bring an Overseer to a Roach v Roach fight? not very common in the Heart of the Swarm. And most importantly, you will just be able to shred through pretty much everything. The range on Lurkers, especially if you have them grouped up, is very significant. Your opponent, like, if he's deciding to, for example, jump on top of the Lurkers and try and snipe him down, he's gonna be in a lot of trouble. Like, if he decides to do that, he is committed. He cannot go back from that. If you, for example, have like a group of Roaches coming in right now and you try and snipe down these Lurkers, you either, like, leave with all of your Roaches or you die. You lose all of your Roaches. There's no middle of the road there. So, in my experience so far, playing Legacy of the Void, people will make the mistake of jumping Lurkers once, and then they decide to never do that again. Now, please note, I'm still not really scouting around, still not really worried about what is going on. Just slowly getting my upgrades and whatever I want, making some Lurkers, getting my third base up and mining, and just sort of, you know, playing my own game. Now, I do want to start my +2/+2, and that's my biggest disappointment, honestly, when I look at this game right now. I don't have very much economy right now, and I don't really have that many upgrades either. Usually, you can get a real advantage from getting +3/+3 really early on in the game, and that's something I definitely should be working on. But here you can see the strength of the Lurkers, okay? So I'm taking control of the camera right now. Most of these Zerglings already died. Most of the Zerglings already died right there. Now, the same would have happened if my opponent would have gone for a Roach attack. If my opponent would have gone for a Roach attack, I would have still been very happy. I got some static defense incoming right now as well. Would obviously be great against Roaches and pretty much everything else. But Lurkers just deal with all of these little tiny things extremely well. So all I really need to worry for right now is going up to a hive, getting up my Lurkers to deal with any kind of potential, like, Brute Lords or any of that sort of stuff. And right now you can actually go ahead and abduct Brute Lords as well, which makes the style even stronger. And, you know, I'm just macroing up. I'm really not worried about what is going on the map. And at this point, I feel extremely confident. At this point, you don't really need to worry about very much of anything. I know that my opponent could be maxed out on Roaches easily at this point in time, but I'm not worried about that. I got plenty of Lurkers already. Got a couple more incoming right now. Actually, I only have 5, but you can still see how comfortable this is. I could have made some more, actually. I probably should have, but the basic concept of it should be pretty clear right now. You basically play defensive, you hold any kind of aggression that your opponent can go for, by simply going for some Lurkers, getting some static defense up, having, you know, a reasonable size of army, and then going for a relatively quick hive. So the idea behind the hive, like I said, is gonna be Vipers. Now, Vipers have one new ability that I did forget to mention, and that is Parasitic Bomb. Parasitic Bomb basically does splash damage to air units, and that allows you to deal with any kind of Mutalisk Twitches, to deal with any kind of heavy Corruptor play, with any kind of Brute Lord play. And obviously, since we are focusing on a Lurker Hydralisk Viper army, you're gonna have an all-round, like, strong fight. There's nothing really that can beat that. Once it maxes out, it seems there is nothing that really can beat that. Now, one important thing to note as well, that a lot of people are not aware of, and, you know, not aware of yet at the very least in Legacy of the Void, Blinding Cloud does work on Lurkers. Lurkers, you know, the attack of Lurkers is not considered a spell. Like, for example, you know, Widow Mines are. Widow Mines are considered a spell, which is the reason why Blinding Cloud doesn't affect Widow Mines. Widow Mines, you know, don't get affected by it, but Lurkers do get affected by Blinding Cloud. So let's say my opponent goes for a timing attack. He puts down the Blinding Cloud, for example, on top of this little group of Lurkers. He can just simply run up there and snipe it down. And that's exactly what will come into play in this game as well. I already got the Hive just about to finish. Got some more static defense incoming as well. And I got my 4th base up and mining, just playing very passive, very defensive, getting the army of my liking. So Vipers on the way right now. I got 4 of them on the production tab. And I'm going to be using those. I want to get like 5 or 6 of them. But I'm going to be using those either for Blinding Clouds or for Parasitic Bomb. Or if my opponent goes for Brood Lords, I will be abducting them as well if necessary. So I do have +3/+3 on the way right now. Like I mentioned, I could have had that one up a little bit before this. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with the way this one is turning out. There really wasn't a moment in this game where I was really worried about what was going on. And, you know, I really wasn't worried about dealing damage to my opponent. I was just simply sitting back, messing up a big army, trying to make sure that I, you know, stay at a defensive position. And once I max out, I will be able to start moving. So I got my Lurkers out right now, morphing in a couple more, or I got my Vipers out rather, morphing in a couple more Lurkers, making sure that I get those out pretty early on as well. And in total, I believe I get like, I don't know, like 13? Is it 13? Yeah, I think it will be like 13 or something in total. Generally speaking though, anywhere between like 10 to 15 to 20 Lurkers seem to be like sort of the golden amount and the golden ratio. Now, I don't know exactly how good my opponent was in this game and exactly what his skill level was. But either way, this should give you a pretty good example on how powerful this can really be. So what I'm looking for right now is either if my opponent goes for Lurkers, I will use Blinding Cloud. If my opponent went for Brood Lords, I will use the Abduct ability. And if my opponent goes for Hydralisks, I will just simply sit back a little bit longer and try and Blinding Cloud anything else that is relevant. And if my opponent goes for Mutas, I will obviously use the Parasitic Bomb. Now here you can see, hold on. Here you can see the strength of these Lurkers, okay? Couple of Spine Crawlers, couple of Lurkers, and literally everything dies. Like, all of these Hydralisks just, you know, just got decimated right there. Dealing with that, you know, just fine. I mean, there's very little weaknesses to the Lurkers, and whenever you aren't sure what to make Lurkers. Now, there's one very important thing to know before we go to this engagement, okay? I've been hearing this a lot. Lurkers are very different from Swarm Host. I was not a fan of Swarm Host at all. As you guys will remember, I thought the Swarm Host style was bad. I thought it was silly because you would be rewarded a lot for sitting back. And you didn't really have to think about positioning your army either because Lurkers would travel so far. Or the Swarm Host Locusts would travel so far. Now, Lurkers are different in the fact that the range on them is relatively short. You need to make sure you position them properly. And on top of that, they also are affected by Blinding Cloud and other things like that. And, you know, there's very little that I don't actually like about Lurkers. I think they're a very cool unit. So there's definitely a big difference between Lurkers and Swarm Host. But let's have a look at this engagement. So I've already analyzed that my opponent is going for Lurkers himself, and that he has like a Roach Hydra army up or something like that. Now, little do I know, Hydralisks are coming out. And actually, the Lurker or the Ultras are once again bugged in the replay. But you can see Blinding Cloud going down right now. I'm trying to position my Lurker army in a place where I can snipe those things down. Hydralisks do look very funny when they aren't animated, which is a bug right now in the replay. But I will just be able to simply move up the ramp, position my Hydralisk a little bit differently, and my opponent decides that he doesn't really like Lurkers very much, and he gets a little bit upset. So all in all, very solid game. I basically sat back for the entirety of it, didn't feel threatened by anything whatsoever. Got a big army up, got +3/+3 going as well. It actually already finished up, at which point I could basically start pushing for the victory. And it seems to be the case that once you get 3 bases up, you will just simply get the victory no matter what. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this game. If you haven't already, hit that like button right below the video, and also make sure you hit that subscribe button so you will be the very first one to get a notification when I upload another. I want to thank you guys all for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, and I'll see you in the next one.